Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Hyundai Tucson. The Tucson does have two different varieties of this screen, so they're both 12.3 inch. It's just that one of them has factory navigation versus this one that doesn't. But regardless, you can still hook up over your phones if you wanted to use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze through Apple devices, or Google Maps and Waze through Android devices, which I'll touch on as we dive into the phone. But let's hop in. Starting off along the top left-hand side, you can hit this in order to jump into profile settings. The benefit there is that you can actively change the user. So if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, there are 3 different profiles that are available. So it's driver 1, driver 2 versus the guest profile. The guest profile is going to have some limitations in comparison to the other user profiles, specifically when you get into vehicle diagnostic data and then rebooting the screen, things like that. On top of that, you hit here, and you've got the option of going into an online manual. And all you have to do is scan the QR code on your phone. So you're just going to pop the phone up, click on the link, and that's going to launch you into the fully digital owner's manual instead. So if this video doesn't help out, or if you're getting weird messages inside of the cluster, the online manual here will be able to help you out instead. Hopping back home, you've got this little tab along the top. So you've got your date and time that you can tap in order to adjust the time, but there's this little bar you can swipe down as well in order to get to a quick launch tray, and that gives you a few other options. You can adjust the screen brightness, put the vehicle into quiet mode, which means it's only going to play audio through the front speakers, or you hit the little gear icon and that lets you do a few other things. So you can add in additional options. From here, you hit done, and then you can see a few other options here. So if you wanted to get a screen beep, you've got that flexibility. So you've got the option of adding in different options here. You can mute out the screen beep, change other options there instead, and then up with the quick launch tray. You've also got a few different connections. So as of right now, there's a phone sitting on the wireless charge pad. If I pull that off, you'll see that that message disappears as well. You've got the current time along the top right. Tapping the time will allow you to adjust the date and time that way. Diving into media, you've got a bunch of options. So you've got AM, FM, SiriusXM. There's a button along the bottom here. So these guys, so that's going to be AM, FM, SiriusXM. This one is going to be additional options. So you've got your Bluetooth audio, sounds of nature, USB music, and things like that. So if you had a USB stick strictly with MP3s on there, you'd be able to listen to audio that way. Then you've got all of your available favorites. So those are the stations that you've saved out as your favorited stations. If you hop into either AM or FM or even SiriusXM, see how there's a star icon there. So anything with a star next to it is a favorited station. So you can remove it if you'd like to. And then all you're going to do is just tap on whatever stations you want to add to your favorite list for AM, FM, or SiriusXM. So you just go through, star it whichever ones you'd like to. SiriusXM gives you category searches. So if you wanted to look for music, sports, talk, etc. On the very bottom right side, there's also this screen. So you can tap that in order to go into kind of like a fuller screen, looking at the album art as well. On our either AM or FM along the bottom here. So you can either go back a page, you can go back home, or hit the little hamburger icon, which is going to bring up this screen so you can scan the FM stations. If you're new to an area and you're not sure what you can listen to, just hit refresh. You can manually tune stations this way instead. So kind of like an old school slider, which is kind of neat. Hopping back a page, hitting this again brings you into radio noise. You can enter a station yourself that way if you'd like to. That's going to tune to that station. Back out, there are some additional sound settings too. So sound settings, dynamic speed, automatically increases the volume just depending on how fast you're going. With the startup volume maximizer, if you turn the vehicle off, you turn it back on again, it just won't be cranked. So if you're listening to audio cranked, turn it off, back on again, it won't be cranked. Adjusting the position will let you adjust out either the balance or the fade this way if you'd like to. Bring it back to center, you can adjust it out so that it's driver focused, rear focused, whatever the case may be, or back to center. Tone gives you a few other options, so adjusting your treble, mid-range, and bass. In my opinion, I found that in the Tucson with the upgraded audio system, this sounds pretty good. But what I'd recommend is play one of your favorite songs, and while the song is playing, go out and adjust these settings until it sounds perfect for you. Or you can bring everything back to center if you'd like to. Guidance, nothing exciting there. When you first start the vehicle up, do you want to get a little welcome sound? Radio noise, nothing exciting. Driver assistance settings, so all of the different warning sounds and things like that that you get, you can adjust these out. So if you start to veer over into another lane or there's somebody in your blind spot, you can get a notification. There's a haptic warning, so if you start to veer over into another lane or if there's a warning system going off, it's going to give you a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, almost as if you're running over rumble pavement or there's something wrong with your alignment. There's not, it's just that there's something going on. driving safety priority, parking safety priority. What these are going to do is it's going to lower the speaker audio. So if you're listening to music, it's going to lower that music so that you can hear any sort of other assistant settings that are coming on, so any notifications. Connected devices for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, you'd have the flexibility of adjusting out different volumes. So if you wanted your media volume at a different level, your phone volume, ringtone, etc., you can adjust all of these out to whatever levels you'd like to. Hopping into AM is going to give you the same options, so you could manually tune to stations that way instead. SiriusXM, hitting that is going to let you sort. You can enter a channel name, go into your sound settings and things like that. Straightforward. And then hitting this one gives you your sounds of nature, so more of those relaxing sounds instead. Bluetooth audio. Bluetooth audio, when you've got a phone connected, would let you stream audio that way. And then, as I mentioned, with a USB audio, if you had a USB stick strictly with MP3s on there, you'd also be able to listen to audio that way. And then on the steering wheel, you've got a few different buttons. So the mode button is going to let you change between all of your available sources that you've selected. I'll show you how to customize these ones as we dive deeper into the settings. And then you can also push up or down if you wanted to be able to move between any of your available presets. You can also push and hold if you wanted it to act as a seek button instead. So push and hold up, push and hold down in order to be able to seek into different stations. There's a volume rocker here. You can mute out in the middle. And then down the center of the screen there too, you can adjust your volume this way. You can turn audio off that way as well. Then next up is going to be adding in a phone.
Bluetooth on your mobile device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
So all we're going to do, starting off on the iPhone side of things, jump into your settings. You're going to go into Bluetooth, and we're just waiting for Tucson to show up. There we go. Pins match up, so let's go ahead and pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. And you can stop here, so you'd be able to stream audio and then make phone calls. But one of the nice things about the Tucson is that you do have Apple CarPlay. So that says that's at unsuccessful because I said no when I first set the phone up. But you can see here I've now got the option of using CarPlay, and it's wireless. It's also backwards compatible, so you'd be able to use a USB-C cable if you want to, and that's just done down the center stack. And when you use the USB-C cable, you have to use the one on the left-hand side, and then also make sure you tap the button so that you're using data transfer. But we've got wireless CarPlay capabilities, so let's just hit Use CarPlay. And it's going to take a second in order to be able to toggle CarPlay on. Okay, if this happens to you and it's kind of frozen up, if you just hit the home icon there, it's going to take a second, hit phone projection, tap on your phone. Here we go, a few seconds in, and CarPlay is technically connected, so let's launch in. Boom, we are fully connected to CarPlay. You can tap this in order to go to an icon view, tap again in order to get to this little home screen instead. But along the top, it's your current time, connection, and battery level, your most recently opened map, audio application, and miscellaneous application. You can hit there to go back to the icon view or swipe across as necessary instead. Now, this screen doesn't have factory navigation, but because we're connected over the iPhone right now, I've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze that are available. And they all work the exact same way. So on the iPhone side of things, Google Maps, Apple Maps, and Waze don't have pinch to zoom capabilities. So you can move around this way. You could then search for addresses this way instead if you'd like to. You can tap this in order to move the screen up or down or zoom in and out. My personal map, I love using Waze because as you go along, if there are speed traps that have been set up, people are pretty good at marking those off. And if you notice a speed trap or if you notice that there's a crash, hazards, things like that, you can mark it off on the map yourself too. Hopping back home brings you back to the screen, but there are so many apps that you can use. Hoopla's a library app, Live One's a radio app. You can use YouTube Music as well. But as of right now, Apple CarPlay still does not support video playback. So it's strictly going to be audio, podcasts are available, things like that. It's just that there's no actual video playback yet. You can kind of customize the screen a little bit. So you see the background there. If you tap on settings, that would let you turn on driving focus so that it's going to mute out notifications. You've got basic appearance and then wallpaper. So if you wanted to customize this in order to make it your own a little bit more, you'd have the flexibility of being able to do it. So small things. Then on the steering wheel, there's a voice command prompt there. So with your phone connected, whether that's over Bluetooth or through CarPlay, if you tap that button, that's going to launch into your Siri Assistant. And then down the middle of the screen there's also this little map button. So if you've got a phone connected over CarPlay or Android Auto, and you're in a screen that doesn't have factory nav, if you tap that map button, that's going to launch into Maps on your phone instead. So pretty useful that you've got that available as an option. Hopping back home, it's straightforward. You do have the flexibility of being able to customize this layout a tiny little bit if you'd like. On your phone, what you're going to do is go into your settings, and then you're going to go into General, and then CarPlay. Find your vehicle. You can forget it, you can customize it, or turn it off. So let's customize, but let's say if you can't even get to this step because CarPlay is not working, check down in the description of this video for a walkthrough on some common CarPlay fixes that you can try. But let's say if you don't like the layout of the icons. See here, there's a little hamburger icon on the right side. You're just going to do a drag and drop. So if you wanted to have your maps and other apps along the very top instead, you can do that. So I've kind of adjusted the apps there. On the outside there, you can see that there's a minus button. So if there are certain apps that you know you're never going to listen to or you're never going to use, you can remove them from the screen. It saves them though, so you could add them back in if you wanted to. Then if you've played around with the layout here too much, like you don't like what you've done, on the top right side of your phone, there's a reset button. So you're going to hit reset, reset, and that's just going to bring the icons back to the factory default layout screen instead. If you hit the home button underneath the screen, that brings you back to this one. You can hit the little settings icon now in order to jump back into your device connections. So as of right now, the iPhone is connected over CarPlay. If you wanted to disconnect from CarPlay, you can just tap one of the other icons there. That's disconnecting from CarPlay, reconnecting over Bluetooth strictly for phone calls. You can do phone calls or audio if you'd like to, or reconnect for CarPlay in order to get all of those features too. But that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Tucson. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you weren't on the screen, let's say if you're back home, there's a setup icon under the screen, or you can swipe across in order to get to your setup here. Just going to tap on device connections and then add new.
Bluetooth on your mobile device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Right, and perfect. And one of the nice things with Hyundai is that it just pulls up. So we're just going to hit connect. There we go. And it's asking, do I want to allow access to my contacts as well? Again, this is not my car, so I'm going to say no to that one. So you can just hit skip. And same thing for my text messages. And boom, it's connecting now. And after we're connected, so we're going to hit done. And look at that. So we are now connected. So you could stop here if you want to. So I'm connected over Bluetooth, so I can make phone calls, and then I can also stream audio. But there's also wireless Android Auto. Same idea, you can use a USB-C cable if you wanted to do backwards compatibility, but let's go ahead and use Android Auto. So let's hit yes there. Perfect, here we go. On the phone, it's asking me, do I want to allow Android Auto? Should take a second. This does happen sometimes. There we go, just hit the back button and then continue. And look at that. A few seconds in, and we are fully connected to Android Auto. So it said contacts download was unsuccessful because, again, I selected no when I went there. But you can see we've got this interesting little split screen along the outside, very similar to the CarPlay side. So you've got your current phone connection and battery levels, along with your maps and then a few other icons. You can tap there in order to get your voice assistant. You could do a button push on the steering wheel button in order to get the assistant for your phone that way instead. Then, if you hit the little icon along the bottom, that's going to give you a bunch of different apps that are available. But if you've got Waze installed on your Android device and it's not even showing up, check down in the description of this video. I've put together a little walkthrough explaining how you can get Waze on Android devices if it's not showing up properly for you. But if we hit the map icon, that brings us back to the screen. The icon along the bottom left, if you tap that, that's going to bring you into a split screen. Tap the map again to go full screen. But one thing I love about the Android Auto side of things, you've got full pinch to zoom capabilities. Google Maps, you've got options for searching there. You could go into a satellite versus a traditional view. You could edit things on the route, so avoiding motorways, toll roads, ferries, things like that. And then if we go back to this screen, so the icon layout here, you do have the flexibility of being able to adjust that. On your phone, what you're going to do is search for Android Auto. You're going to go into Android Auto settings, and when you do that, it's going to bring you up to this screen. Gives you a lot of options, but we're looking for Customize Launcher. So just tap there, gives you a bunch of options. Anything with a check mark next to it, you could remove it from the screen if you want to, and then you can also drag along the side if you wanted to adjust the layout here. but it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side. So in order for these changes to come into effect, hit the home icon under the screen. You're going to tap on this little settings icon here. You're going to get to this screen. All you're going to do is disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto. And when it launches in, back to the icon view, you can see the changes that we've made here have now come into effect. So it's not dynamic the same way it is on the iPhone side of things, but you can at least adjust it. Hopping back home again, if we hit that little settings icon, you've got both phones that are now connected. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So let's say if you wanted to connect to the Android for your phone calls, but the iPhone for media, you can do that. So you can kind of do a mix and match this way. There's a little hamburger button on the outside too, so it's who gets connection priority. So if you've got multiple phones that are in the vehicle, who's it going to try to connect to first for these? But that's how you set the phones up. You could then delete devices. You can select one, select all, and then just delete and yes. And a few seconds in, we've deleted both phones. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Hyundai Tucson. From here, there's some basic prompts, nothing exciting there, but Bluetooth system information is where you're going in order to change the vehicle name. So if you don't want it to be Tucson, you want it to be Bob's Ride, Sally's Ride, whatever the case may be, you can adjust it there. Phone projection settings are there as well, so you can either enable or disable Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You can see there all of the previous phones that have been connected to the vehicle. But that's how you set up a phone inside of the Tucson. Phone projection is specifically for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, so if you have either of those connected, that would be either an Android Auto or Apple CarPlay button. There's a valet mode available, vehicle diagnostic data, maintenance information, basic notifications, your online manual, and then a boatload of different vehicle settings too. So let's dive into these ones, starting off with your vehicle settings. So as you drive into these different settings, you'll notice that they're available a few different ways. So all of these things, driver assistance, drive mode, etc., you can get to it as an icon view instead, or through this list view, and then you can dive deeper into each individual option. So starting off with driver assistance and driving convenience, you've got your smart cruise control. And smart cruise control, you've got your buttons along the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So you can toggle cruise control on this way, just button push to do it, and it's going to set it at whatever your current speed is. And one thing to note is that it's strictly going to be adaptive cruise control. There's no traditional cruise available inside of the Hyundai Tucson. So you toggle the cruise control system on this way. You could then increase or decrease your speed by pushing up or down. You could then push and hold up or push and hold down to increase or decrease 10 kilometers at a time or 5 miles per hour at a time. So the way that this one works, let's say if you're at 37 kilometers an hour, push and hold up, it's going to bring you to 40, 50, 60. Push and hold down, it'll bring you to 30, and then stop there. You could hit this button in the very middle to pause your speed. You can hit the brake to pause your speed, and then you can hit the middle button again in order to resume your previously set speed. There's also a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you, with 4 unique levels that are available. And then there's also this one, which is a lane follow assist. So it keeps you perfectly balanced in your lane. Even if you have your hands off the steering wheel for a minute, it's going to keep you nice and balanced. But if you actually want to see the adaptive cruise control or smart cruise used in person, check down in the description of this video. That's the same thing. If you want to walk through on the steering wheel buttons or the cluster, you'll find it down below. Inside of the infotainment system, you've got some additional settings, so you can adjust your distance, acceleration, or the vehicle's reaction speed. Back to driver assistance and driving safety. Series of options here too. So forward safety, the vehicle can let you know of a potential collision. And then from there, you've got your lane safety too. So it's going to keep you balanced in your lane as well. So it's essentially a lane keeping system. So lane keeping versus lane follow are two different ones. So lane safety is going to nudge you back into your lane versus lane centering. It's going to keep you nice and balanced in your lane. There's your blind spot safety system as well. So along the side view mirror, there is a little blind spot system. So you can see there, it's going to highlight and let you know. And it's also going to let you know inside of the cluster screen if you're on your driver assistance page. So you'll see on either side of the cluster that you'll get a blind spot warning depending on who's there. Safe exit, when you go to exit your vehicle, it can let you know of a potential obstacle there. Driver attention warning. If you've come down to a stop with this setting enabled and the car in front of you starts to drive away and you haven't started driving, it's going to give you a little notification inside of the cluster. Speed limit options. You can get a speed limit assist Yay or nay. So where that comes into play, inside of the cluster screen, when you've got the speed limit assist turned on, you'll notice that you've got your little speed sign along the very top there. So you've got speed assist, warning, and then a few others. So you can just get the information. So if you just want the speed sign information, that's available. You can get an actual warning if you're going a little bit too fast, and then you can also get an assist. And then with the speed limit assist on the steering wheel, you've got this button here. So let's say if the speed goes from 50 up to 60, you could push up to increase your speed. Let's say if it goes the opposite way, let's say if it goes from 60 down to 50, you could then push down in order to decrease your speed as well automatically. That's also based off of an offset or a tolerance level. So are you okay with going up to 10 over or under the speed limit instead? So that one, a matter of preference. I personally am not a fan of that system, but if you love it, you can keep it on. There's your parking safety, cross traffic alert. As you're going to back up, if there's an obstacle behind you that you don't see, or even if you do see, it's going to give you a heads up and you're going to get a little beep as you go, giving you a heads up that there's somebody there. You've got your camera settings as well. So you've got your parking guidelines. So your parking guidelines are these little guys here, and they are dynamic. So as you go to rotate the wheel, you'll see that you've got your guidelines that are dynamic there, and park, and then rear view monitor. So at low speeds, when you switch from reverse into drive, it's going to keep that rear view camera on for a brief second. And then this one here is strictly going to be the rear camera. So in some versions of the Tucson, there is the option for a surround view monitor or a full 360 cam. It's just that this vehicle does not have that available as an option. Hopping back into setup, vehicle, driver assistance, and then our sound settings there, you've got some sound options that we've already seen. So your warning volumes, if you want it to be high, low, etc., and then all of these other options, which we've seen. That's the basics of your driver assistance. Next up is going to be drive mode. So down the center stack here, so you've got a series of different modes. So there's drive versus terrain modes. So if you just move up and down inside of the infotainment and through the cluster, it's going to jump you between a few different modes that are available. So there's normal versus sport versus my drive. If you hit that little drive terrain button there, that's going to switch you between drive modes or terrain modes, so snow, mud, or sand. All of these things are going to do something different. So they're going to play with traction control, stability control, things like that. Your sport mode is going to change out your shift point. So rather than, let's say it changes gears at 2000 RPM, it might wait and it'll shift at 4000 instead. So it gives you a sportier performance. You've got your My Drive mode, and that's where this one comes into play. So your My Drive mode is an option for you to do what you'd like. So Smart mode means that it's going to give you the best possible fuel economy, but maybe you want a sport powertrain, but normal steering. So your steering wheel won't be as stiff, but you've got different options that are available there too. So you can kind of select your own mode if you'd like to. From there, you've got different options for climate. I always just recommend keeping these the way that they are. So defog, defrost, dehumidify, things like that automatically. There are a series of different climate control settings that are down underneath the screen, which I'll show you last. You can adjust out some lights. Ambient light is available. It's not across the board, but with vehicles that have ambient light, you can select individual light colors. And then you can also select your own custom color. So if you like the look of a certain type of green, a certain type of red or orange or blue, whatever the case may be, you can adjust it out to whatever you'd like to. And the ambient light at night looks really, really good. There's also the option of linking it to your drive mode. So as you move into different drive modes, it's going to change up the ambient light color inside the vehicle. For your doors, when do you want to automatically lock or unlock the vehicle? As you start to drive, when you go to shift, same idea with unlock. Do you want the doors to automatically unlock when you shift to park, or do you want them to not automatically unlock? And there's your power liftgate, so you can turn that one off. How fast or slow do you want the liftgate to open up? You can also set unique heights. So do you want the liftgate fully open? Or if your garage is a little bit higher or lower, you can adjust it out that way. Or you can select your own unique height instead. So all you do is raise it up however high or low you'd want, push and hold the button on the right side of the liftgate, and it won't open up past that point instead. And then there are a few other unique key fob tricks that you can do inside of the ride. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how these ones work. So in order to use it, make sure you're locked first, then go for a walk. So you got to get a few feet away for a few seconds, and as long as the feature is enabled, just going to walk up towards the back end, and with the key fob on you, listen to this. So you could push the lock button at this point in order to pause it, but you've got smart trunk. So the trunk opens up there automatically, and then you can button push there if you wanted to close as well. It's actually pretty neat. One thing to point out is that when the vehicle's locked, so I'll wait for that door to close. Okay, vehicle's locked. The fuel door is also locked, so you have to be unlocked in order to get inside. And then there's one other neat key fob trick that you can do. So if you take the unlock button, you're gonna push and hold. So you're gonna go push and hold, watch this. Release, deposit part way, push and hold again, and that's going to continue the cycle. I love it. I wish that it was all 4 windows opening up, and it would be cool if you could roll them back up again, but at least rolling them down to air out the vehicle is pretty useful. Your digital key is available, so you've got the option of a little key card, and you can also use your phone as a key. Unfortunately, with this being a press vehicle, I can't showcase those features, but if you want to see how they're done, Hyundai does have a video available, so I'll link to that one down in the description of this video. There are a series of convenience settings too, so rear occupant alert when you go to turn the vehicle off. If the back door has been opened, it's going to give you a heads up to check the back seats. If you're changing out oil yourself, you can adjust that out. There is a wireless charge pad that's available for the vehicle. You could disable the wireless charger down the middle here, so if you didn't want to use the wireless charge pad at all. And then there are a few different indicator types. So what kind of lights do you want to get for that wireless charge pad? And then you've also got your right wiper when in reverse. So with that enabled, if you've got your windshield wipers going, you put the vehicle into reverse, it's automatically going to turn on the rear wiper for you as well. And that's all of your vehicle settings. As I mentioned here, you can dive into all of these different settings, either using the icon views instead. And then sound settings. So many options. So we've already seen all of these different sound settings. Into device connection, so if you had phones connected, changing out your vehicle name. User profiles is where you're going in order to change different users out. So if you wanted to change it to user 1, user 2, or your individual guest profile, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do that. Back to our setup, and let's see, screen layout gives you a few other options. So inside of the cluster screen, there are a few different looks that you can go for. So we've got the classic look as of right now. You can change that out to a modern look if you want something that's a little bit different. And then you can take that up a notch by going into a more simplified view or simplified look instead. So a series of different looks, and then even when you're in those different gauge styles, as you jump between the different drive modes, it's going to change up the look very, very slightly. So you've got the option of adjusting these out. I personally am a bigger fan of the classic look, but that comes down to a matter of preference. And then you can also lock it into an individual style. So you can link it to the drive mode. So as you go into a normal mode versus sport, it's going to look slightly different. But let's say if you love the look of the sport mode, but you want to get the features and the benefits of the normal mode, you can lock it out to any of these other styles instead if you'd like to. I personally think that just looks a little bit more aggressive. So you can adjust that. There's a screensaver that's available. So when you go to turn the screen off, you could have it as a clock face if you'd like to. You can adjust it out into anything else. So you've got different watch faces available, or if you prefer a digital clock instead, turn the screen off, and you can see we've got our current date and time. There's a split screen that's available. If you had factory navigation, you'd have some additional options here, but your split screen is going to be, if we're let's say on FM for an example, your split screen there. So you can see your latitude, longitude, your clock face there instead. And next up is display. So display, you can adjust the brightness of the display this way. So if you wanted it darker, brighter, etc. Down by your left knee, you've got a series of different buttons that are available there as well. So you can increase or decrease the brightness of the screen that way. You can open and close the trunk, and then you can turn traction control on or off instead. There are some options for your camera, for your display. So again, we've already seen that one. So our rear view camera. Blue light filter is available too. So later on at night, it's going to essentially remove the eye strain from the vehicle. You can have it come on automatically or at a set time that you choose instead. There are a few different buttons that are available too. So you've got your custom audio button down the middle. So it's that little guy there. So when you push that button, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to open phone projection, quiet? Do you want it to turn the display off or do nothing instead? Personally, a bigger fan of the display off is you can push and hold that button to turn the display off if you'd like to, but you can also now press that button in order to be able to toggle it on off. And there are 2 unique steering wheel buttons. So you've got your custom button here, so your star icon. What's that one going to do? Is it going to turn the media off? Is it going to put you into quiet mode? Do you want nothing to happen? So if we push that button now with it on home, it's going to bring us back to the home screen instead. Hopping back into our individual buttons, there's also the mode button. And that's this one on the steering wheel. So when you hit that button, you can have it jump between all of your available sources. So if you always listen to either AM or FM, you can just have those ones selected. If you tend to listen to all of these other sources, you can adjust this out to be whatever you'd like it to be. And then the up and down switch there. So when you hit that up down, what's it going to do? So either change favorites or change station frequency instead. There are some different options for the cluster, so adjusting the brightness of the cluster screen. Your theme selection, so and you can get to these things a few different ways. Your content selection, when you start the vehicle up in colder conditions, it can give you a little heads up that the roads might be icy. And then you've got a welcome sound when you first go to turn the vehicle on. Blue Link is available, so an app for your phone. And then there are a series of different general settings as well. So you've got your basics of software information. You can do an update this way if you'd like to. There's system information here, so you can see what's new, modem info, but your date and time is there too. So you've got certain things that are grayed out, and that's because you're in the auto mode. So if you toggle that off, you can then adjust your date and time that way if you'd like. Moving back, let's just go automatic. Do you prefer to be in 12 versus 24-hour mode? So do you like that military time? And you can even lock out your time zone. Where that comes into play is if you live somewhere where you straddle a time zone and it constantly flips you from one time zone to the other, you can permanently lock it in to any of these options instead. And then do you want to adjust out for daylight savings time, yay or nay? You can adjust out your language, so English, French, Spanish, or Korean. You can adjust out the keyboard type. And then there's also the option of adjusting out your measurement units. One of the nice things about it being a digital cluster is that when you go to adjust this out, so either miles or kilometers, it adjusts everything. So it's going to adjust what's going on with your speed, what's going on with your current odometer and things like that. You can adjust this out as well. So do you want to be in either Celsius or Fahrenheit? And where that comes into play is underneath the screen. So you can see there, we've got our current climate with us being in Celsius. So you can adjust out to Celsius or Fahrenheit. And then your fuel economy units are available there. Again, dependent on whether you're in miles or kilometers instead. So Canada versus US. You can change it out to PSI, KPA, or bar for your tire pressure. With media, do you want media to be off when you go to start the vehicle up? So if you've got the radio cranked and then you turn the car off, with this one turned on, when you turn the car off, restart, there won't be media playing. And then do you want the media to continue playing for a few minutes after you turn the vehicle off? And then you can reset. Now, I'm currently in the guest profile, so I can't do a full factory reboot. You'd have to jump into either user profile 1 or 2 in order to do that. But you can at least delete the guest profile information. And then there's also a way of doing a soft reboot instead. So a full factory reset would wipe the whole screen out. It would get rid of presets, any phones that you've connected and things like that. I'll show you the soft reboot in just a second. Then just underneath the screen, you've got a series of other options. So you've got your volume rocker. Push and hold that button in order to toggle the screen off. Push again to turn it back on. You could do a hot button press to get back to your home screen. There's a map view, so if your phone was connected, you jump right into your phone maps. You can search the vehicle for any setting. So if you had a certain setting that you wanted to disable or enable, you'd have the flexibility to do it. You can hit media in order to get to those media screens, so AM, FM, or SiriusXM. If you push again, that's going to change you out to all of your available options instead. Got your 4-way blinkers. You can seek between stations this way. There's your unique button. There's a setup option in order to jump into all of your individual settings. And then there's also your little tuning rocker there. So you can kind of see us going crazy along the side there. And then let's say if the screen is giving you problems. So Android Auto's not working, Apple CarPlay's not working. There are some other issues. The screen's glitching out. You could do that full factory reset if you wanted to. That's the last thing that you should try. The first thing that you should try is just underneath the screen here. So you can see right underneath the setup button on the right-hand side, there's a tiny little button, a little bit tricky to see. But if you take a paper clip, you're just going to insert it into that button and push, boom. Soft reboots the screen. So it's going to take a few seconds in order for it to cycle through and come back on, but that's going to solve the majority of issues that you might be facing. Like I said, if your phone's not connecting properly, if navigation's not working, if you had it in your screen or any other issues, you can do a soft screen reboot by doing that. After a few minutes, it's going to launch you right back into your screen instead. And while that's loading up, so just underneath the screen here, so you do have dual zone climate control available inside of the ride. If the passenger side is set to something different than the driver, you can tap that button in order to sync the passenger to the driver's side. There's heated first row seats with the option for ventilated, so that button would be there. Heated steering wheel. You can adjust your settings there, have it going to your windshield face or feet. You can toggle the system off. You've got your front defroster, rear defroster, turn on your air conditioning, air circulation. Underneath, you've got 2 power points. So this one here is going to be your data transfer one or charging instead. The one on the right side here is strictly going to be for charging. And then there's also a 12-volt power point down there. Right here, you've got all of your individual mode buttons. So you've got your drive versus terrain mode, so button push in to change it out. There's the auto hold setting as well. So with the auto hold setting turned on, what that one does is that if you are driving the vehicle and you have yourself in drive, you take your foot off the brake, the vehicle is not going to move. So when you come down to a complete stop with auto hold enabled, it essentially holds you in place. The auto start stop, that's the one that's potentially going to kill power to the engine if you come down to a complete stop for an extended period. There's also your downhill brake control and then a button in order to get to your rear view camera instead. So I know that is a heck of a lot of information, but that's everything you need to know about the infotainment system inside of the Hyundai Tucson.